Ask Reddit.
What's a job that's super inflated but actually sucks? Story 1. Working in a zoo. You need a degree, but you get paid like $14 an hour, so someone has to support you financially or you're not going to be able to pay all your bills. It's also shoveling shit all day outside, regardless of the weather, and the workload is literally so heavy that your body will start shutting down even in your 20s. You also spend so much time cleaning that there's almost no time to enjoy, play, or provide enrichment for the animals you care for. The staff are all animal lovers like you, and they probably don't get along with people that well, which leads to the staff not getting along at all. Dealing with visitors can be a nightmare, as parents don't want to watch their kids as they run around banging on the glass of the enclosures. Adults do this too, trying to get the animals to move or react, which is very disrespectful and cruel to the animal in their home. I'd say the burnout rate for being a zookeeper is one of the fastest in any professional career. It's going to break your wallet, your body, and your mental health. I'm a zookeeper, and I totally agree. I'm lucky to be at a large institution with a great team and a union, which is what keeps me here, besides the animals, of course. But this industry is so horrible at its core. Low pay, long hours, physically dangerous, very little upward mobility, and very few transferable skills. Many places are quick to remind you that if you try to talk about working conditions, there's a long line of people who will happily do your job for less. It's also extremely true that you can't really pursue this career long-term without someone supporting you. If my husband didn't have his job, there's no way I could be doing this, and I have full-time tenure and am paid above salary. Story 2. Engineering. The first thing is that the working conditions for engineers are quite good, and I think in many ways they are better than in other professional jobs. So why are you here? It's a matter of unmet expectations. Most engineers study engineering because they enjoy math and problem solving, and they generally like tinkering with things. Unfortunately, most engineering jobs don't require everyday math. I may have needed to do something more complicated than calculus twice in 10 years. Instead, you spend all your time filling out paperwork and attending tedious meetings. Then, you end up pigeonholed into a specific niche, and it becomes almost impossible to break out of that niche. So you may end up spending 30 years just designing ventilation for office buildings and nothing else. Many engineers dream of designing airplanes, ships, or robots, but instead spend each week filling out reports. My wife is an electrical engineer and she hates meetings, most of which seem to be scheduled to justify the manager's work and don't actually improve productivity. Then you have to deal with people who have no intention of doing their jobs and meeting the client's demands. And God help you if you're assigned as a reviewer and have to point out errors on technical drawings. All the designers are going to hate you. As in most professions, who you know is far more important than what you do. My wife has a professional engineering, PE, license in 3 states. It took her many years, a lot of money, and a ton of effort. And the company simply ignored it even though they asked their engineers to seriously consider getting licensed. Meanwhile, someone who smokes cigarettes with the boss gets regular raises and promotions. Meritocracy, for crying out loud. Story 3. Physician, specifically primary care physician in the United States. Yes, it pays well. But you sacrifice your 20s by doing tons of school, missing events, and accumulating between $250 to $500K in debt. And then you finally become an attending physician only to realize that you can't do your job well because insurance companies constantly fight you to not pay for things that would make patients healthier because their main objective depends on it. It makes you lose faith in humanity because the system is so messed up. Much of your time is wasted on pre-authorization calls with insurance companies that are only productive a minority of the time, and they have to be done on unpaid time. Plus, you'll have a lot of patients who just need to quit smoking, stop drinking, and eat healthier. And they won't. My wife is an emergency physician, though she left clinical work and now works as a medical advisor in the health bureaucracy. In Australia, so she doesn't even have to deal much with insurance companies, and the debts are much lower. She now spends a lot of time trying to get the bureaucracy to take seriously the issue of how many doctors are leaving the profession altogether, and perhaps find out why and try to retain them, which they don't do, because it's easier to recruit doctors from abroad. More bureaucracy always. They're always blamed for everything bad that happens, when the real reason is usually a systemic lack of resources that one can do nothing about. A culture where doctors help others, so they should be martyred, ruthlessly exploited by management who paint any request for more staff as greed, when the real driver is usually safety. Many important decisions are made by politicians who know almost nothing about medicine, and they listen to the whims of the public. And we have it much better than in the United States. People keep leaving the profession, even if it means taking big pay cuts, though probably not even a pay cut for general practitioners, most of whom don't earn that much. And being a junior doctor is hell. We still frequently see things like young doctors dying in car accidents on the way to or from work due to exhaustion. Story 4. It's not a job, it's starting your own business. Everyone says you're your own boss and you manage your own time, when the truth is you'll be working harder than ever for someone else. And every problem is your problem. And then you end up making less anyway. The odds are against you because, most of the time, there's a bigger business with lower prices but better margins, since they have capital. So it turns out that most people who start small businesses often continue working elsewhere to really sustain their business because it's hard to compete. I started creating and selling planner-specific stickers 10 years ago, back when it was a niche product on Etsy. No one had the idea to create foil stickers. I did everything in that business. I worked all day, every day. Creating, producing, shipping, photographing, marketing, etc. It was a huge success when I sent freebies to influencers for reviews. I built a brand and learned how to convert my Etsy customers to buy from my website. In total, I was fulfilling an average of 40 to 50 orders a day. I had no free time outside of work. And then Michaels and Hobby Lobby started selling similar items to mine, but at a fraction of the cost. I didn't even try to compete. I quietly closed my business within 2 weeks. The whole adventure lasted less than a year. Story 5. A former movie actor over here. There are some good things about it, but it also involves a lot of long days and nights, travel, waiting, and repetitive shots. The worst part is the impact on your self-esteem. You'll learn to see yourself as a product, and to compete with other human beings who also see themselves as products. You'll get used to being told that it's not so much what you can do that matters, but whether you look good doing it. It's dehumanizing, especially if you're young, and especially if you're a young woman. Story 6. Ecologist/wildlife biologist. Every article about us sounds like we're shooting galloping bighorn sheep from a helicopter with darts. In reality, it's a very competitive and oversaturated field where most people are stuck doing what they hate. 1. Most people get into this field because they want to touch animals. 99% of the time, you can't touch animals. Working directly with wild animals is always a gamble because you could stress or hurt them. Most wildlife projects now rely on indirect monitoring using counts, camera trap photos, EDNA, audio, etc. Most data collection now happens in front of a computer, and most wildlife jobs might involve 1 or 2 weeks in the field and the rest in an office. I know people who have worked on a single species for over a decade and have never seen it in the wild, let alone touched it. 2. There's almost no room for advancement. Most people work in short-term technician positions and struggle for any of the few permanent positions available. Some states have fewer than 50 permanent biologist positions at any level. 3. The job is twofold, office work and field work. It's never a good balance. Most ecologists spend months or years in the office planning, have a limited window to conduct a very intensive field season, and then spend months or years analyzing data. You get into the field because you love animals, and 75% of the time you're in front of a computer or in meetings. 4. Field seasons, the fun part, are usually difficult, intense, stressful, and boring. You work in places where animals live, i.e., where it's hard for people to be. My current field site is at 6,500 feet, extremely rugged, and I hike over 10 miles a day with a 40-pound pack. My body is wrecked. You work on the animal schedule, which all too often means at night. Right now, I typically work from 2 a.m. to 3 p.m. and never get enough sleep. You're not just collecting data on your animal, but on everything that affects it. Right now, I have to collect data on soil texture, on top of everything else. Under the best of conditions, you struggle to get enough data. Under the worst, entire projects are scrapped due to bad luck. 5. Our funding comes from the people. We can't just work on whatever we want, we work with species that are important to the people who pay our bills. Most ecologists study animals that are either 1, something humans kill for sport, or 2, something humans have killed so many that we're worried we might kill them all. Every project is a tragedy if you love the animal you're studying. 6. There is very little job security, even before the recent mass federal layoffs. Funding in the field has always been uncertain and often depends on strange aspects of state and federal budgets. Even people with seemingly permanent career positions can lose them due to forces beyond their control. Idaho Fish and Game's Fur-Bearer program is 100% funded by the sale of firearm ammunition. If people stopped buying enough bullets for even 1 year, they would cut the program. I just lost a quarter of my project's annual budget because Trump was elected, and my funders wanted to withhold some money because they didn't know what other projects might be cut. 7. Most of the people we interact with hate us. If you study/manage a species that people kill, hunters are angry at you for not letting them kill more, and non-hunters are angry at you for facilitating the killing. If you study/manage a species that is threatened with extinction, you're basically hired to somehow turn a garbage dump into a victory garden. The people who lit the fire hate you, the public hates you for wasting taxpayer money and/or your accomplishments, and half the time the federal government hates you for making their lives harder. I've been shot at, verbally and physically assaulted, and received death threats because an endangered species I worked on didn't have the decency to go extinct. 8. The job doesn't pay anything, but the positions are competitive. You need a degree plus years of experience in a field with few paid job opportunities. Most people turn to volunteering or interning to gain experience, which only those with outside support, usually from parents, can afford. Most people in this field are antisocial rich kids on trust funds. If you manage to survive and get paid, you generally earn less than $40,000 a year. 9. If you're lucky enough to work on a species/project that actually manages wildlife, it's often a small part of your job. I specialize in using GPS collars to track carnivores. I spend hundreds of hours in the field to catch fewer than 10 animals a year, and each job lasts about half an hour. 10. You have very little control over your life. Where you live is based on available jobs, and most people move several times a year between jobs. Your accommodations are often dictated by your employer. Mine have ranged from hotel rooms to a bed in a garage or a tent. Your work hours and field seasons are governed by the animal's biology, the weather, and natural disasters. Funding is often governed by people you've never met and forces beyond your control. Story 7. Construction. Everyone says, don't go to college, get into a trade these days. The pay is overrated. Yes, you can make 6 figures if you put in a lot of hours, but wouldn't you rather work less for more money, and you risk wrecking your body by the time you're 40? Many veterans I've spoken to, and even some younger ones, said it just wasn't worth it. A few years ago, I saw a post from a worker pointing out that the advice to go into the trades is quickly becoming the same as the advice to go to college for a career. His point was that simply telling people to go into the trades completely ignores the years of apprenticeship and doing shitty work before eventually gaining the necessary experience to become self-employed. Then you open up new problems like running your business and hiring others because you're at an age where the physical strain is too much to deal with. Basically, there's no one-size-fits-all advice. Each individual must weigh the options against their skills and interests, or simply what they're willing to deal with and accept to make money, before deciding which path to take. Story 8. Working on comics. It's extremely hard on your body to be at the drawing board 14 hours a day. Pay hasn't increased much since the 1980s, and the talent pool has become an ocean of talent. Companies barely pay royalties anymore. Your indie comic probably won't be a hit, and won't get a Hollywood production deal, and if a character you created ends up in a Marvel movie, chances are you won't see a dime or a career boost. Collaborators are fickle. You need a steady partner to support you and get you into the business, and all it takes is one change of publisher for all your hard work to be taken away. And you'll most likely die young. Although, it's a lot of fun to make a good comic. Story 9. Video game programmer/developer. I hear a lot of people online talking about what their dream job is like. They go on and on about how video games are their everything and how they want to make their dream games, etc. Game development is long and tedious. Replicating bugs to fix them is tedious. Getting gameplay just right is tedious. And it's hard on your wallet. Game development doesn't pay well for most people, in the trenches. I was a game programmer, and even a lead programmer at times, but I wasn't making any money, even though programmers generally earn more than other staff. We lived paycheck to paycheck. And it's hard on your resume. Why did you only work at Company B for 6 months? They went bankrupt. And Company D? They went bankrupt. And Company E? They went bankrupt. That is, if you even get an interview with such a shoddy CV. It looks bad, but it's rarely your fault. And you rarely get to work on your dream game. Most of the games you work on are assigned to you, regardless of what they're about. My only dream game was never released. The parent company shut down our entire division after about 6 months. They were horrified that it could take 18 months or more to develop a game. They thought they could be developed in a couple of months. I loved my time in the video game industry, but it was volatile and very different from what I dreamed it would be like. And I earned far less than my colleagues in the normal, software development industry. And I had to move around a lot just to get my next job. Story 10. The fashion industry. It's dominated by women, except for many of the top designers and art directors who think they're all big shots and create an environment that stifles creativity. So many egos. Free clothes are awesome, but it's a very wasteful industry because you're expected to wear the latest fashions and styles. Being a buyer is all about Excel spreadsheets and trying to find styles comparable to what sold well last year during the same season. Even when you work at a high-end company with ethical practices, there's still a lot of shady stuff going on. Samples only come in one size, a 6, and when you're skinny, they give you tons of clothes, but once you wear a size 8 and up, people act like you're no longer stylish or attractive. Honestly, it's depressing and weird. I'm just thankful to be out of the industry now. Story 11. Novelist. Everyone outside the industry thinks you must be rich, but in reality, you earn peanuts per book sold. Your work is hacked from shady sites and stolen by AI. Contracts in the industry move so slowly that even if you sign what appears to be a great deal with a 6-figure advance, when you break it down, divide it into contracted payments, and calculate taxes, it's still likely less than the minimum wage for a fiscal year. Once you've written a book, its success is almost entirely out of your hands, and the little promotion you can do has a minuscule and immeasurable impact on sales. If you're traditionally published and mid-listed, you're completely at the mercy of the publisher and at the bottom of the hierarchy of people to pay/contact. Many novelists I know are juggling multiple jobs and/or considering quitting because writing simply doesn't make enough money. Story 12. United States Secret Service agent. It sounds super cool and glamorous, but my neighbor is one and hates it with all his heart. Only a few are lucky enough to actually be around and protect the president. Most are assigned the most horrible and boring guard shifts. He told me he once spent 12 hours sitting in a stairwell in a building where the president was giving a speech. He often has to babysit a VIP's child at school or do some other terribly boring job. Story 13. Many golfers, especially novice golfers who are deep into the game, think that working in the golf shop is a fun job and have the attitude of, if you work at a job you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Nell. I worked part-time at a golf shop in college. I heard the horror stories, so I only did it part-time. They tried to get me to work full-time, and I refused. It's usually a very low-paying position, especially since you easily work 60 hours a week. I know people who work 90 hours a week. It used to be that many director of golf positions were pretty good, but not anymore. And to rise to that level, someone has to die or retire. I think it was Golf Magazine that did a piece on the high divorce and suicide rate. I once walked into the pro shop when it opened and found my coworker dead from auto-delete after his wife left him, and they reopened the course after lunch. And it's been really bad since the pandemic, as golf's popularity has resurgence, and that just means longer hours, more crappy customers for the same crappy pay. One of my friends, we met when he was hired at the camp where I was a member. He drove almost all the way across the country and immediately started working 7 days a week for over 80 hours a week. He couldn't even make it to doctor's appointments because of his schedule. The saying goes, if you love golf and want to play golf, don't get into the golf business. In most places, you're just a glorified grievance taker and credit card taker. Story 14. Be a streamer. I can't imagine being a full-time streamer at all. Your job depends on other people not working, so you only work in the evenings and at night. Then, you only socialize with other streamers, who, by default, are all a bit narcissistic. If you stop streaming for a week, your income drops by 80%. If the niche that made you famous stops being hot, you're done. Yeah, you make a ton of money from events and stuff like that. But it must be super tiring with all the pressure of always being live, always needing a camera with you, and most streamers retire after a few years, which I totally understand. Story 15. As a registered veterinary nurse in the UK, I can confirm it's fucking tough. Ridiculously low wages, long hours, weekend and off-hours work. Not to mention sky-high prices that we hate and have no control over, but this means clients talk to you like rubbish because we're greedy, yet we get paid a pittance above minimum wage. And to top it all off, workplace toxicity is rife. Navigating your way through criticism/bullying/snide comments and even the occasional instrument thrown at you in anger is hard work. It turns out the hard part of the job is finding a practice that's a good fit for you. Some days, the animals are often the easy part. The impact on mental health is no joke. Story 16. It's not that it's a really good job, but one that is very glamorized and romanticized is that of a florist. I was a florist for 13 years and I loved it. It was one of my favorite jobs, but the pay is miserable, and the shipping services you have to use for business are greedy and opportunistic. It's incredibly difficult for small florists to survive because they're constantly competing with big box stores. Corporations can handle the nonsense of Teleflora, FTD, and others, but small businesses can't. When ProFlowers sends an arrangement to your shop that's supposed to cost $80 but you only get $30 to make it, you either reject it, or you make it for $30 and risk the customer getting upset because they think they're getting the $80 arrangement, or you eat the loss of $50 in materials and products and make nothing. So, as a florist, you have to choose between putting up with that shit to have your own shop and maybe make some money, or going to work for a large flower shop earning minimum wage with zero benefits. Either way, you can't support yourself or your family with that job, and you don't have health insurance or retirement benefits. It's a nice dream to move to a quiet town and open a flower shop, but unless you're rich or have someone to fully support you, that dream isn't realistic. Story 17. Funeral director/embalmer. It's overhyped by all the fake goths, and it's a shitty career. The pay is incredibly low. I was making $14 an hour, and requires a degree and a professional license. Plus, the hours are horrible. I did it for a year and got out as quickly as I could. Story 18. Mental health nursing. I'm not sure if this is overrated, but I always get shocked reactions when I tell people about it, and they always say it must be a great, very rewarding line of work and that people just starting out are as hopeful and bright as ever. It's nothing like that. I feel like everyone already understands that nursing is a grueling work environment with generally not so great pay, depending on where you live, but I don't think many people realize how bad it is unless you know someone or are in it yourself. Even at the beginning, as a nursing student, you work very long hours, 12 to 13-hour shifts, and along with all the nursing work you do, you're treated like a healthcare assistant and run around like a headless chicken doing everything for everyone. You don't receive any support, or it's incredibly rare, no one acknowledges what you do, and no one cares. No one prepares you for the horrors of what you see regularly, and the verbal and physical abuse you'll encounter. The hours are long, the pay is terrible, you honestly never feel like you're making a difference, and there's no support either from management or your colleagues. You do a lot of good things and they go unrecognized, but if you do one small bad thing, you'll never stop hearing about it. I've had some very good and wholesome moments, but they're minuscule compared to the day-to-day. Although, I hope it's different elsewhere.